Okay, good afternoon and welcome to the Musings of a Madman. I'm your host, the last operator of the universe. Today, I'd like to talk about one of the two times where my father was actually. I'd like to talk about the two times where I was actually whipped. Corporal punishment, where I was disciplined for being a naughty boy. Now, as a child, I can say that I got away with a lot of things. My parents I was their first kid, so they sort of treated me with kid gloves, which means that I mostly got everything I wanted for simply because I cried for it. I was spoiled beyond belief. I remember one time where I I woke up in the middle of the night crying because I wanted sweets, and they had to go get it. I made them get me sweets in the middle of the night when they had to go to work the next morning or whatever, you know. So I was accustomed to getting my own way, and usually there were no repercussions for what I did. I was never really beaten much. But I remember two times in my life where I actually got a beating, and they were not pretty. But I'd say I definitely deserved them. The first time was when I lost a lot of money. Yes. This was probably before primary school, before grade one, probably in preschool, and my parents were busy running a taxi business. And what they would do is every time they made the money, every time the driver would bring home the money and they would write it in their books and everything. After that, they would put the money in a big bag, like on the top of the cupboard, somewhere in their room. And the thing is, at the time, I shared the room with them, so every time they did that, I knew what they were doing. I knew they were putting money in a bag and everything. So one day, I don't know the exact details, but one day, a man like walks down the street, and he's at our gate, and he says hi to me. He talks to me, and somehow, some way, he offers me sweets. Right? He says he's gonna buy me sweets, but he goes like, I don't have money. And me being a stupid little kid, I jump up and say, hey, my parents have money in the house, so can I get that and then you get me sweets? And he was like, yeah, that's perfectly awesome. So little old me goes up into the room. I probably prop up a chair and climb up so I can reach the bag at the top of the shelf, and I remove it. It was a heavy bag and I was a very small child, so I remove it and I drag it to the outside. I drag it outside the yard, outside to the gate, to the man, and I gave it to him. And then he left, and I never got my sweets. And frankly, I felt very betrayed by that. But at the end of the day, old man comes home and he wants to know where the money is, okay? And I was a culprit. I think I just even confessed and said, yeah, it was me. I gave it to this guy and he was supposed to get me sweets. And that day he whipped me, okay? I cried my heart out, and like even my mom felt sorry for me, as far as I remember. She was like, no, it's enough, you're hurting the kid. And it was even my father's policy not to beat, not to have me beaten. He was like, no, leave the kid, let him learn. But on something like that, he was like, he drew the line and he whipped me. And I should have learned. Obviously, I should have learned, like, nah. And I think I did learn not to give money to strangers. Don't trust strangers with money. Don't trust strangers to buy you sweets. Just don't talk to strangers, kids. I mean, obviously. And the second time I got whipped. Second time I got whipped, I was in second grade. I remember this clearly. I was in Afrikaans class, and I think I'd been talking in class, and usually back then you had this thing where if you're talking in class, you get whipped. You get beaten on the hand. They spank you a little bit, or not spank, but they take the stick and they hit you on the hand, and it hurts and it's embarrassing and you might cry a little bit. Now to me, by that time, I think my previous beating had already been wiped from my memory, and to me, I had no experience of being hurt after that. And honestly, I was a quiet kid most of the time, so usually I never got beaten. But this one particular time, the teacher says in Afrikaans, I don't remember exactly what she said, but to me, I understood it as, I'm gonna beat you now. So I hear this, I'm gonna get beaten, and I am scared out of my mind. Immediately I drop my bag. I get out of my seat, I leave my bag, and I just run out the door. and the teacher chases after me as I'm running out the door, and we end up at the playground. And there was this little scene where the monkey bars were between us, and I was like trying to get away, and she was just trying to chase me, and I just found a way to escape. And it was silly, man. Like, I made this teacher chase me all the way to the playground. And once I managed to escape from the playground, I escaped outside of the school gates, ran all the way home. It was about like a let's say a 20-minute walk home. Ran all the way home, and I snuck into the yard. And I was in the yard crouching because I know I'm not supposed to be home. I knew I had just done something bad, and I was there just hiding in the yard, hoping no one sees me, and hopefully I would stick around until it was time for me to be home. And unfortunately, the maid saw me. The maid saw me, and she told on me, man. She told on me hard. And obviously my dad was called back home. He came back and he was pissed. I think school was the one thing that he took seriously. Me bunking out of classes was just bad. I don't think the reason even mattered of why I escaped. You know, I mean, I ran out of there to save my life. You know, for me, I was protecting my own safety. You know, it was for my own comfort. I was not just trying to get away from work or whatever. I wanted to be safe. I did not want to be hit. So to him, the reason didn't matter, but he understood. I think by that time I had somehow gotten a name for being able to run away from any problem. So to get me into the room where he disciplines me, the old man goes like, come get some sweets. And me, I guess I forget that I had just done something wrong. I'm like, I happily run into the room waiting for the sweets. I get in the room, he locks the door behind us, and I'd received a beating, the worst beating of my life, honestly. You know, because this happened when my friends knew about it. My friends were right outside the window and they heard everything. So I'd say, yeah, the old man came home after work and he found out what I had done. And by this time I'd been playing with my friends, so he called me to the room, come get some sweets. He locks the door and I get whipped and I cry out, and my friends are outside the window hearing everything. And when I come out, you know, rubbing my bottom and everything, they are there laughing at me as was the custom, and and I'm embarrassed as shit. But obviously I never did that again. I don't even know what happened the next day or the next week when I went back to the school. All I know is I never bunked classes again until my later years. So I hope that wasn't too short, but yeah, the musings of a madman. And that was a story of how I was a very naughty child. Jesus. Yeah, that was a story of how I did something deserving of a beating. All right, peace.